Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Modern love stories often begin with a swipe, a spark, and a surge of dopamine, but too many end in confusion, silent withdrawals, or blistering conflict, leaving us wondering how passion morphed into pain faster than a TikTok trend could rise and fall. Jung would insist that hidden psychological forces, more than flawed dating apps, are the puppet masters behind this cycle. Today, we trace the darker rivers running beneath modern relationships, exploring Jung's warnings about projection, shadow work, and archetypal entanglements, because only by naming these forces can we master them instead of being mastered by them. Imagine two people on a first date, smiles wide, stories flowing. Each believes they are encountering the other, yet what Jung called the anima and animus, the unconscious inner images of the opposite gender, are often the true participants, coloring every perception with childhood longings and cultural myths. The early-stage euphoria many call chemistry is frequently a mirroring of projections. You see your ideal image reflected back, your partner sees theirs, and both think they've found a soulmate when in fact they are falling in love with a piece of their own undiscovered psyche. While projection can ignite romance, Jung cautioned it is doomed to collapse under the weight of reality. The moment the other person breaks character, forgetting a text reply, confessing a weakness, or revealing political views that jar, your own disowned qualities flood into consciousness, and suddenly irritation replaces infatuation. This crash often feels like betrayal, yet it is our own mind renegotiating the contract it subconsciously wrote, forcing us either to integrate the projection or to search for another canvas on which to paint it. In contemporary dating culture, the ease of replacement heightens this pattern. At the first sign of mismatch, many bail, swipe on, and repeat the high, never staying long enough to grow through the discomfort into authentic intimacy. Jung argued that genuine relationship begins after projection is withdrawn, when lovers confront each other as actual human beings rather than imagined ideals. But modern media rarely glorifies this quieter, steadier stage. What then is the shadow that Jung claimed lurks behind romantic tension? It is everything within us we judge, fear, or shame, all the traits we banish because they collide with our self-image. Ironically, we usually end up dating someone who embodies those very qualities, triggering both fascination and fury. For example, the orderly perfectionist may attract the spontaneous free spirit, initially admiring their carefree nature, but eventually condemning it as irresponsible. Yet that critique reveals the perfectionist's own repressed desire for freedom, begging to be acknowledged. Left unexamined, the shadow breeds blame and resentment. If only my partner changed, everything would be fine. But Jung insists the real work is turning inward, asking, what part of me needs to grow if I'm so triggered by this trait? When couples skip this introspection, they enter what psychologists call the repetition compulsion, reenacting old wounds in new relationships, hoping unconsciously to heal by forcing the partner to do what parents failed to do, a mission doomed. Without self-awareness. Digital culture intensifies these dynamics by providing endless comparison. Scrolling through curated highlight reels of other couples can awaken feelings of inadequacy, feeding envy, another shadow aspect, rather than gratitude for the messy, beautiful reality you share. Social platforms also train short attention spans, making the slow art of deep conversation and emotional attunement feel like work. Yet Jung would remind us that individuation, the journey toward wholeness, requires sustained engagement with complexity, including the complexity of another. Soul. Another dark thread is the inflation of the ego through partners as status symbols. When we date for the photo op rather than genuine resonance, we reduce people to props, which invariably dehumanizes them and corrodes trust. Jung warned against identifying with a persona, the social mask we wear to secure approval. Relationships built on personas are fragile because any disagreement threatens the mask's integrity, provoking defensive anger instead of open dialogue. To move beyond persona love, both partners must dare to reveal their authentic selves, including fears, ambitions, and contradictory feelings, a vulnerability that feels risky in a cancel culture environment but remains the only doorway to genuine connection. Consider the power struggle stage, familiar to long-term couples. This is where unmet needs and previously suppressed shadows erupt. Each partner projects the toxic parent archetype onto the other, replaying childhood scripts to reclaim lost power. Jungian therapy teaches that instead of forcing the other to change, we should engage in active imagination, dialoguing with the inner figures that drive our emotional storms, thereby reducing their grip on our present interactions. Attachment theory, though post-Jungian, echoes his insights. Anxiously attached partners may cling due to unresolved abandonment trauma, while avoidant partners withdraw to escape engulfment fears. Both patterns stem from unconscious narratives that distort current reality. The healing path involves earning secure attachment through self-regulation, honest communication, and mutual empathy. Jung believed that observing one's inner world with curiosity rather than judgment transforms it. And this is equally true for relational patterns. Technology's constant pings activate our nervous system's fight-or-flight response, making calm dialogue harder. When conflicts arise, couples often vent online instead of direct repair, reinforcing adversarial narratives that sink deeper than the original hurt. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious suggests cultural myths shape our expectations. The fairy tale ending, the twin flame fantasy, the hero saves maiden trope. When real life diverges, we feel cheated rather than liberated from cliché. Modern relationship advice frequently swings between radical self-sufficiency, never settle, prioritize your hustle, and total merger, find the one who completes you. But Jung would advocate for the tension of opposites, honoring both autonomy and connection. In practical terms, that means cultivating a life rich in purpose and friendships beyond the partnership, while also investing time in shared rituals, weekly check-ins, collaborative projects, playful adventures that weave a stable emotional fabric. The dark side surfaces too in gender archetypes under pressure. Men still battle the outdated script of stoic provider, while women juggle conflicting demands of career powerhouse and nurturing caretaker, leading to role confusion and resentment on both sides. Jungian analyst Robert Johnson noted that when modern partners fail to discuss these unconscious expectations, they act them out in passive-aggressive ways, mocking, withholding, or sabotaging, until the implicit contract is made explicit and renegotiated. So how do we shed light on these shadows? Step 1 is self-reflection journaling after conflict. Rather than catalog your partner's faults, ask, what ancient story did this trigger in me? What quality did I see in them that I secretly disown? Step 2 is dialogical listening. Set a timer, let one speak while the other mirrors without commentary, then switch. This forces presence and dismantles the urge to defend identity over understanding experience. Step 3 is shadow play. Consciously exaggerate the trait you dislike in private theater. If you hate their messiness, get messy yourself for 10 minutes. This paradoxically dissolves the charge by reclaiming the disowned part. Couples who embark on therapy often fear it signals failure, yet Jung viewed crisis as catalyst. The wound is where the light enters, so the relationship becomes a cauldron transforming raw ego into refined empathy. In the crucible of long-term commitment, archetypal energies evolve. The passionate lover gives way to the wise elder couple archetype, whose intimacy is less about fireworks and more about resonance, shared silence, and collaborative creativity. But to reach this stage, partners must accept seasonal shifts, grieving the end of initial infatuation rather than chasing perpetual novelty through affairs or serial monogamy. a temptation heightened by algorithmic matchmaking, suggesting endless possibility. Jung spoke of enantiodromia, the tendency of extremes to flip into their opposites. Hyper-romanticism often flips into cynicism, possessiveness into indifference, unless consciousness intervenes, embracing balance before the pendulum swings destructively. Power imbalances represent another shadow. Financial dependence, emotional labor gaps, or societal privilege can warp affection. Naming these dynamics aloud, setting equitable agreements, and continually revisiting them fosters transparency instead of covert resentment. The collective shadow appears in systemic patterns: how heteronormativity marginalizes queer love, how racism inflicts trauma on intercultural couples, how economic precarity fuels domestic stress. Jungian work must therefore extend beyond the individual psyche to communal healing. Practically, that means educating ourselves on allyship, sharing resources fairly, and voting for policies that support parental leave, mental health care, and living wages, because stable relationships flourish in supportive ecosystems. Next comes myth-busting. The idea that love should be easy is culturally seductive. Jung would retort that any union worthy of soul-making requires struggle, for it is through encountering the other's difference that we expand our own limited identity. Conflict then becomes compost. Disagreements, when processed respectfully, feed the soil from which mature love grows. The couple that learns to fight well, criticizing behavior, not character, owning feelings, seeking collaborative solutions, turns darkness into depth. Dream analysis offers a potent tool. Dreams often reveal truths censored by the waking ego. Keeping a shared dream journal can uncover repeating symbols hinting at relational issues and creative ways forward that talking alone may miss. Ritual is another antidote to modern fragmentation. Carving out device-free dinners, seasonal getaways, or simple morning hugs anchors partners in embodied presence, soothing the nervous system and reinforcing trust. Equally vital is maintaining healthy boundaries. Individuality guards against the codependency that Jung saw as an escape from the daunting task of individuation, two halves clinging to avoid becoming wholes. Yet boundaries are not walls, but bridges with gates. Opening and closing them consciously fosters safety and excitement simultaneously, a dynamic equilibrium echoing Jung's union of opposites principle. When betrayal does strike, whether micro-lies or major infidelity, the knee-jerk reaction is to label the partner villain. Jung, instead, invites us to ask, what collective or personal darkness erupted here? How can accountability and compassion coexist to transform rupture into rebirth? This doesn't mean condoning harm. Rather, it frames forgiveness as a heroic journey requiring remorse, restitution, and radical self-knowledge from the betrayer, and courageous boundary redefinition from the betrayed. Jungian alchemy speaks of turning lead into gold. Relationship crises, if met with honesty, creativity, and professional support, can yield stronger intimacy than naive bliss ever did, forging what psychologist Esther Perel calls a second marriage with the same person. The final frontier is self-love. A cliché, yes, but foundational. Without a rooted sense of worth, we outsource validation, idolize partners, and collapse when they inevitably disappoint. Individuation cultivates an inner sanctuary that enriches, rather than replaces partnership. To nurture self-love, integrate daily solitude, creative hobbies, body movement, and spiritual practices. Paradoxically, the more at home we are within, the more hospitable we become to another's presence. Takeaway: modern relationships often implode because we expect them to save us from ourselves. Jung offers a radical alternative. Use love as a mirror reflecting our fragmented psyche, then undertake the brave work of assembling those fragments into a whole. In doing so, we transform the dark side into a guiding light, illuminating not only our romantic journey, but the collective. Evolution of human connection in a digitized, distracted age.